My boot ripped on my CV joint and flung grease all over my car. And today, we're finally gonna install some new ones. About a month ago, I had a leak on my front tire. I thought it was my brake line. I was so pissed. Then upon further inspection, it was actually my axle boot. If it rips, particles could get in there like dust, dirt, and it'll cause premature failure. I know you could buy rebuild kits for the old ones, and I honestly don't know when the last owner replaced them. So I bought these axle shafts on eBay for a steal of $140 for both the left and the right ones. A pretty good price if you ask me. Obviously, first step, we're gonna remove the wheel. Okay, so now I'm gonna take off the axle nut. Try to use the impact, still struggling a bit, so I'm gonna go ahead and spray it with some PB Blaster, and that should loosen everything right up. And then next, we're gonna remove the caliper. So I'm gonna remove the slider pin bolts first, take the caliper off, get the brake pads off. So once the brake pads are off, we're gonna go ahead and remove the 17mm bolts that hold in the caliper carrier. As you can see, man, this thing flung grease everywhere. This boot is ripped completely. This band here doesn't even work anymore. Like, it's not even holding the boot on there anymore, so it's just kind of loose. Grease is just kind of seeping through, and then right here, there's a hole. I'm gonna go ahead and take off these screws that hold in the rotor. Rotor comes off. I'm gonna remove the suspension. It's gonna make it easier for us because then we could pull out the axles. Let's go ahead and remove the top and bottom bolts, and that's gonna allow us to swing this knuckle out. Right here, I just use my impact drill. Makes everything that much quicker. You see all this grease build up on these bolts as well. And I'm telling you, this thing made a mess all over my rims, all over the suspension. So we're gonna give everything a nice clean. I'm just gonna tap these bolts out. All right, here I'm just using my crowbar, just pop the knuckle out. There it goes, it just pops out. You can see the axle kind of came out from the other side, which is not really supposed to do that, but we'll see why later. Get a 10mm and then remove this ABS sensor out of the way. There we go, we're just gonna hang it on the brake line, put the bolt back so we don't lose that. You see all this buildup. I mean, this thing's been leaking for a while, it looks like. And now I'm gonna be removing the ball joint. Since I am gonna be in this area, I mean, I might as well replace it since the ball joint itself is not even that great either. You see here, I try to hammer it out. And man, I'm gonna tell you, this ball joint was a pain. Did not want to come out. Came out of the actual knuckle where it's supposed to be press fit in first before it even came out of the lower control arm. I eventually gave up on that. Went to remove the axle from the actual knuckle. We're just tapping this out, and then I get a socket here, and I just kind of tap it out the rest of the way. Okay, and just like that, the axle comes out. Usually we would have to pop these out, but like I said, this one kind of fell out because the retaining ring wasn't on the mid shaft. Like I said, this band is kind of broken and old and loose, so just wasn't holding any grease in. This ball joint was a pain. Kept trying to take it out, wouldn't want to come out. Try to hammer it, try to use the extractor, but I was at this point, I almost gave up. Gave it a few more blows, and then it popped right out. So here it is. I mean, it's all beat up. You can see I didn't even have to press it out or in. Just junk. And like, see, more grease. And here I'm just pressing in the new one with this ball joint press kit that you could get from AutoZone. Centering it up before I put everything on there. Quick tip, I put this in the freezer for about 3 hours before I started doing this. It just helps the metal shrink on that ball joint, and you know, allows it to go and press fit, and then after it heats back up, it's going to expand to its normal size, and that's just going to keep the press fit in there. Put that new snap ring back on. CV axle, or constant velocity axle, is what connects the transmission to the wheel. This transfers the power from the transmission through the wheel, and that's what allows your car to move forward, backward, constant velocity. So this is always spinning when you're driving. And the cool thing about these is it could go at any angle. So if this is spinning, this is gonna stay at this angle. Any angle you put it, it's gonna stay there. So this side has needle bearings instead of ball bearings, like this side. It allows it to roll in and out, you know, the suspension, the wheel travels, all that. And it's still gonna allow it to spin at any angle. And basically, that's what a CV joint is. So we get the axle, and we just kind of go in reverse. Like I said, I already cleaned everything up. And now I'm just going ahead and pushing in the new axle. Then right here, you can see I'm greasing up the splines and the back of the axle, just so there's no squeaking, no metal to metal. And just putting the knuckle back on. Honestly, everything's just reverse, doing everything in reverse, putting the knuckle back on, putting the ball joint back in the arm, tightening that up, torquing it down. And then, you know, you just got to check if the cotter pin's align. If it doesn't, just tighten it more. You never want to loosen these. You're supposed to tighten them more if the holes don't align. So here you can see me tightening it just a bit more, just a little bit of a turn at a time. Checking it, turning it a little bit, checking it until those holes line up. And then after that, we're good to go. And then we just slip in the cotter pin. We open it up, and that way that cotter pin doesn't fly out, and it doesn't allow this capsule nut to back out as well, because if that backs out, I mean, pretty bad news, so you don't want that to happen. Reverse everything. We're putting the bolts back on for the suspension, tightening everything down, torquing everything down. I'm just using a breaker bar on one side and the torque wrench on the other side. Here I'm just snugging up the axle bolt. Then I'm gonna torque that down to 136 foot-pounds. Putting on the rotor, putting those screws back on, putting on the caliper carrier. I like to put Loctite on them because I know there's a lot of vibration in this area. There's a little trick right here. I mean, I just put on the caliper carrier, and then I got my torque wrench for the axle nut. Make sure it was torqued down. That keeps the wheel from spinning. There's a bunch of different axle nuts. This one has a little system where you have to tap in that outer ring just to keep that axle nut from backing out. Put your wheel back on, and that's a wrap. Who needs a gym when you got weights at home? Your axles.